Thanks for tuning in. This is Positioning Your Passion podcast. I'm your host, Nah, and I have a dope guest with me today, Drew, better known as Instrumental. How you doing?
Doing well. Peace to everyone. Salute to you. Much appreciated to you, as I've told you personally, for inviting me on to the podcast. I definitely believe in the objective of what you're trying to achieve and display with the podcast. So when you asked me if I wanted to be a part of it, I'm like, yeah, let's go, let's get it.
Yeah,
put me in, so we can build. So I'm ready.
No, I appreciate that. That means a lot. I definitely took a chance on putting this together, and a lot of the goal for Positioning Your Passion is being able to talk with creative entrepreneurs about like what they're doing, what's working, and even some of maybe even like the challenges. I think in a lot of ways when we talk to artists or even folks that are tastemakers, it's really rooted in what the product is and how the product got made, but you kind of miss a lot of the behind the scenes of like what was that secret sauce to actually make it successful. Right. And I think you've been saucing for a while now, and I admire your work, and yeah, it was really a no-brainer to ask you. I just was like thankful that you was in Chicago and not someplace else, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But traveling man, yeah.
But kicking it off, first question, how did you get the name Instrumental? Where did that come from? What is Instrumental?
So I started the brand. I started brainstorming about the brand back in 2005. Man, it's been a long time. Back in 2005. And I was going to go with the phrase. I'm a fan of just language and phrases and things of that, orators and what have you. And so I was going to go with a phrase at first. Like, I think I was going to go with "Come On with the Come On," which is like an old Smith and Wesson song. Or I think "It Is What It Is." I was just going through different phrases. But when I was thinking, like, from a branding perspective, how that would look, I was even back then thinking, like, kind of social media-wise, MySpace, Facebook. And then, like, from a shirt perspective or from a garment perspective, whether that be a tee, shorts, pants, or what have you, I said, let me just go with a single word. So what's a word that can kind of speak to the brand, but that'd be fairly easy to remember, but putting a different spin on it. So I end up coming with instrumental. And so instrumental just by itself, so it's instrumental with the E. Instrumental with an I just speaks to obviously the bass for music. Without the instrument, I mean, you can have somebody rock something a cappella, but you have that as the main composition or the instrumentation. And then instrumental by definition is serving as an aim to achieve, or a means to, serving as a means to, for an aim or objective. And so I've always strived to be instrumental in what I'm ever a part of. So whether that's from an art perspective, whether that's from a music perspective, whether that's from a speaking perspective, working with a brother, son, whatever the case might be, boyfriend, fiance, husband, whatever, being instrumental in all aspects of life. And so I stuck with that word, but just put a different spin to it by replacing the I with an E. So not a long drawn out story or anything like that, but that's essentially how I came up with the name. And then even the logo, a lot of people think that's a tree, but I just wanted to instrumental to the logo just to be a symbol that nobody really kind of knew what it was, but like I didn't want to take something that already existed in the world and brand it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And so the symbol is just kind of like an abstract drawing by a homie of mine, Jeremy Pettis, who's been with the brand since the beginning. He's now with Nike, but he's from Milwaukee. So
okay. And how long has the brand been around?
So officially incorporated, I was thinking about this when I was reading the questions, 07 or 08. I think officially incorporated in 08, but I was making products back in 06 and 07. Like the two products that first came out with the Rap Minus Slide Super Hip Hop and the Always Remembering shirt. With the very first two, I'll take that back. The first three products, those two, there was a piece called "We Need Fly Self-Conscious Leaders," which was, in a sense, my first collaboration with We Need Fly, the Fly brand by Jave Jeff, who really, him and Corey Gilkey from Leaders are the ones who, I'm kind of jumping ahead on the question.
Oh, no, well, yeah, shout out Corey. Shout out Corey, yeah.
But those two guys are really instrumental in
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, pun intended, absolutely. And helping the brand come to fruition. And so we need Fly, Self-Conscious. Self-Conscious was a store that's now, what's Vail spot? Um, I should know. But VDOT, Vail, we need Fly, Self-Conscious leaders and named after leaders. So the shirt, what I envisioned is actually what happened. Thank God, is that the shirt was sold in all three of those stores. So it was an introduction to Chicago, to the world in a sense, by starting with Chicago as a home base, and so that's how that came about.
And you from Chicago?
Yeah. So here's the thing. I didn't go to high school in Chicago. I was
Okay.
born and raised on the south side in Inglewood. When I was younger, me and my sister, I have a twin sister. My mother got a job in Kankakee, Illinois, which is like about an hour
I know
away.
Kankakee, yeah.
Yeah, so no, I still remember I cried on the way down. Me and my sister actually cried because we were like, oh, we wanted to go to high school in Chicago. My mother had her reasons for economic reasons, some safety reasons, coming out of Inglewood. So I think back, I'm like, I'm kind of somewhat glad I kind of took that move out there as opposed to being in Chicago at that particular time. And there was even thoughts of me going, I had somewhat of a relationship with my father back then. He was born and raised in Compton.
Okay.
And so kind of going back between those worlds, so it was kind of like a healthy mix of gang activity and black culture and education and things of that nature, which was a real interesting mix, but it aided, both were crucial in my upbringing, in my mental disposition, the way I looked at life and operated, and actually what I input into the brand. I mean, the brand is, in a sense, hip-hop, music, and education and, black culture, in a sense. And I mean black culture, not a lot of this watered down stuff. We'll get
Right.
to that in a minute.
Growing up in Chicago up until high school, and then going to Kankakee, having a mother who was all about kind of history and learning and English. At what point did you get inspired to actually fall into the hole of I want to know about Chicago's history, and I want to actually start to be a part of it and collect it?
So I always had a thirst for history, and that really it might even go back a little further. And so my father was he was kind of like a disciple of Maulana Karenga, and not like he had like a cult following or anything like that. It wasn't like a David Koresh situation or anything like that. So Maulana Karenga was the founder of Kwanzaa. He founded Kwanzaa in 1966. Okay. And so, again, he was born and raised in Compton, but moved to South Central LA. And so Maulana Karenga, actually his name was Ron Karenga, switched it to Maulana Karenga. He set up the African American Culture Center in South Central. So we used to walk there. So my father, being a disciple, we used to go there every Friday night, probably more than that. But when we were young and we used to go to LA from here to Chicago to LA to visit my father, he worked. And during the day, we stayed at the center, the African American Culture Center. So there, I'm surrounded by, Maulana Karenga was a professor. I was surrounded by history. So it was an artist by the name of Ramsey. So he painted, it was probably 70 to 80 black leaders, speakers, everybody from Dr. King, Malcolm, Marcus Garvey, Ida B. Wells, Fannie Lou Hamer, revolutionaries, inventors, Benjamin Banneker. So I was surrounded by that. So it was almost like we were surrounded by Kwanzaa 24/7, but I was surrounded by black culture. I mean, the ladies there, they were still rocking fros. And so they were really, really into the culture. So you had a variety of speakers, everybody from Farrakhan to Khalid Muhammad come through. Like, I'm young, but I'm kind of exorbitant in a sense. So became a fan of history, had a real hunger for that, just knowledge and, kind of our history, where we came from. That then led to high school. I had a African-American history class in high school that I was never taught black history. So it was something I always had to seek. Like, they taught me about Martin Luther King and Harriet Tubman. No mention of Emmett Till. they mentioned Malcolm, but they didn't mention what he was about. I didn't learn about Ida B. Wells or Harriet Tubman. Ida B. Wells or Fannie Lou Hamer. Yeah, Harriet Tubman freed slaves, but her life was much more than that.
Yeah.
So what else did she do? And so I'm like, no, I need to go and seek this on my own. Now, obviously, we didn't have Google back then, but I would go to the library, even going into college, like Fridays and Saturdays. Sometimes before I went to a party or before playing cards, and not to say that I was better than anyone else, but I mean, that was where my interest lied.
Yeah.
So I would kind of club it out at the library. I went to Florida A&M, or I'd either go to Florida State, which had a better library. No disrespect to the alma mater, and I used to engage in the books and history, and at a professor who taught the history of the United States, 1865 to the present. That was probably my best class that I've ever had, and so that's where and he had like a photographic memory, so he would literally read off in the Declaration of Independence, and even though it didn't mean anything to us, but like certain documents, he had a photographic memory. He would be able to cite on page 287, so really it just carried on from college to when I got out of college. I didn't have enough money at the time to buy art or anything like that, and I didn't understand the importance. We would go to a museum here and there, but I really didn't understand that, no, I can actually participate. So you would see the work, we'll see the art, and I think a lot of us do this now, but we don't understand that we can actually participate in the acquisition of the piece. So we might see a Kerry James Marshall piece. We might see a Jacob Lawrence Migration Series piece. Now, those are pieces in the millions now, but they weren't always in the millions. So we would see these various pieces by artists, and it never really occurred to me till later on in life, like, oh no, we might very well have the next Kerry James Marshall among us. We might very well have the next Elizabeth Catlett among us now within the younger generation. So now is our time to collect these pieces. So that's understanding that history, understanding the Harlem Renaissance, the Chicago Renaissance, and the Wall of Respect. I think I bought that book here. In Bronzeville, because a lot of people from Chicago don't know we had our own art renaissance here. A lot of people don't even know we had the Wall of Respect. I'm like, yo, man, we got. So it's a lot that we need to learn, and and I have a excitement in telling people about it if they know it. If they don't know, not to say, I try not to put anybody down or anything like that, but I'm really just like, no, we need to know about this so we can be.
It's gonna make us stronger.
Absolutely.
And we understand what
absolutely, and so you can really understand the importance of collecting. Obviously, if one has the means, but you can understand the importance of that from a legacy and asset standpoint.
Okay. So you have been collecting art pieces, artifacts, so many different things. Like, how big is your collection?
The art.
And how do you organize it? Or is it organized?
Nah, the art is and look, I never take for granted my relationship with artists and being able to collect some pieces. I never take that for granted. So let me preface my statement by saying that art wise is probably close to 200 just from art, and that's original and prints. Artifacts, like when I combine the figures and then just the various other artifacts, like the 1969 Black Panther newspaper with Fred Hampton, old pamphlets on Nat Turner, the 1968, April 5th, 1968, sometimes of the day after King got shot. The June 16th, 1991 newspaper with the Chicago Bulls won the first championship in 5 games from the Lakers. So I still remember as a shorty. Man, that was a good time. But and so of those, I probably have original Black Panther wanted newspapers of Angela Davis. Who's the other one? Eldridge Cleaver. Eldridge Cleaver. And so just different artifacts like that. Old Right On magazines. I probably have 3 different, one from Baltimore, one from New York newspapers of when King got shot. And so of that, it might be a little over 100, and then you have the figures, maybe more than that. So
well
in all,
over 500 pieces.
Close to
vinyl to cassettes to.
Oh yeah. Now, if you
pieces.
include the vinyl and the cassettes,
Yeah,
it's
all
like
of
over
it.
1,000.
Over
yeah,
1,000,
well over
yeah.
1,000. So
And this is something you've been building, kind of your whole life.
Not
in a way,
not really. So when I was
long?
in, and I'm gonna speak on it, but I rarely speak on it. But when I was in college, how can I make a long story short? Actually, I was in Compton, California when I found out, but I was staying off campus and my spot got robbed.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because they thought I was selling weed, and I'm like, why would I be selling weed and I keep it in my house when I'm gone? But anyway, so yeah, it was set up by my neighbors, but like I was a college rep for Def Jam, so I had old. I had old, like I had the first issue of The Source. I had different magazines, cassettes, old promo posters and things of that nature. I had an original pair of my cousins, the first Jordans that came out. I had an original pair. They were worn, but still. And so they took all of that. And so I sometimes I get sick when I think
That's
about it.
like,
but
man,
I think about, man, if I would have had that along with the other stuff, but I mean, look, I still thank God through it all. So I'm not complaining. I just try not to think about it. So it hasn't been all my life. Really, I just got heavy into collecting. I mean, the cassette tapes I've had for a while. The vinyl I've had for a while. The art I really didn't get serious about until like 2012. Like I had a few pieces. My first art piece is a 1967 print that I actually, Malana Karinga gifted me. A while back, 1967 piece called "What Are You Gonna Tell Them" by John Oye Lockhart, who I think is from the East Coast, spent time in LA, but a powerful piece that was actually up at the African American Culture Center in South Central LA. My second piece was, from my barber, a diptych called Black Butterfly. Only got one. I was dating someone and she got upset and took it, so I don't have that anymore. I'll probably never get it. So. Yeah, but really 2012, 2013 is when I really got serious with the art.
About a decade.
Yeah. No, about a decade in. And once I started, really Hebrew Brantley, world-renowned artist, and his manager at the time, Pia Johnson, are really the ones who really got me into collecting and speaking to the importance of it, and not just looking at it as a piece that's visually pleasing, something that can decorate the home, add to the ambiance, but also looking at it from a legacy standpoint and from an asset standpoint. You've been through my spot. I got stuff all over the place. Yeah. Like I probably at this point have just as much. Like I have stuff all over my walls.
You keep talking about some stuff in mom crib, some stuff in LA.
Yes,
you got stuff.
Yeah, I've run out of room, and I'm not like, so. One of my, I kind of look at him as a mentor, Patrick McCoy.
Okay.
He's phenomenal brother. He probably has the best collection of art in the city. Okay. And so his art is all, if you ever get a chance to go by his spot, like his art is all over the place. So my art is not like that, as you've seen. I still have a little bit of room. It's not like he has art on his doors, bathroom door. I'm not gonna go that crazy, but I probably have just as much on the ground, or almost as much on the ground, wrapped up, than I actually have existing, hanging in my space.
Yeah.
So I would rather, and I have some powerful pieces that I would like to hang and display, but I just don't have the room. So I definitely need a larger space. But I have. As I have it organized as much as I possibly can here, and then I have a storage spot in Bronzeville. My mother has about 40 so of my pieces, and then I have some in the storage in LA. But I do document all my stuff. So I mean that's important if you can.
There's some sheets
to document. I document every piece that I have, the medium, the year, the artist. And I pretty much have just about all of it photographed to add. So written documentation, photograph documentation, and then so here it is. You have the art, but then you have the framing aspect of the art, protecting the art, which is crucial, which is important, and we can get into that later. And so you have that, but then you also have like the appraisal and the insurance process, and that's a conversation that doesn't happen in the art world, because that can get fairly pricey.
And we had to
as
go
far
later.
as
We can
insurance.
talk about it right now, because
Okay.
I had a question I was gonna more so thinking about folks who want to get into collecting, and they maybe they got a couple pieces. What advice would you give to folks? Like, what should they know, and why is being a collector, as a Black person, as a person of color, like, why is that important? So 2 questions.
Give me the first question again.
If you're starting out as a collector, and maybe you know what I'm saying, we ain't got 100 pieces, but maybe you got 2. And
which is cool.
You wanna grow, you wanna build. Like, what are some things that they need to know? I know framing is being able to protect, insurance, but then also, what's the other question? So framing, like what things they need to know starting out as a collector, and then let's just start there.
Well, look, you don't necessarily have to, and I appreciate the question. One does not necessarily have to like attend a course or anything like that. You don't need to be pre-qualified to be a collector. I mean, you just have to have interest. And so, rule number 1, in my opinion, is buying what you like. That's rule number 1. 2, one of the misconceptions that I had, particularly going to the museums and whatnot, whether that be the Museum of Contemporary Art or the Art Institute, or the museums in Brooklyn, New York, LA, what have you, Houston, Miami, Art Basel, is you don't have to have a lot of money. And so that's when I curate the various print projects, and I really set that up just so that more people of color, Black, African Americans, the kinfolk, can have access to the work. And I'll get to that with the second question. But those are 2 things which I want to mention. 1, buy what you like. So it doesn't matter, if the masses like it, or if the masses are pumping up an artist, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to actually buy it, unless you're just buying it from like an economic gain later on, which is nothing wrong with that. But you want to buy what you like, and you don't have to have a lot of money, because a lot of people think that they have to have a lot of money for the art and then the framing, because sometimes the framing can actually be more than the art, and insurance and appraisal could low key be, well, not even low key, could actually be higher than both of those. And so those 2 need to be understood first. From an educational standpoint, if you want to dig a bit deeper when you're going into collecting, you should talk to artists. All right, you should talk to as far as say, look, I have interest in this piece. What's the price? A lot of artists will work with you on the price. A lot of individuals don't know that you can set up payment plans with these artists and things of that nature. The other thing is that I wanted to mention, you had mentioned about what are some of the things you should, also talking to like various gallery owners. Gallery owners or managers, going to the museums and talking to the curators, talking to the individuals who are over whatever installation or project or an exhibit, and just kind of getting some information from them. What are some of the artists that I should look at? What are some books that I should read to obtain more knowledge about just art in general, but certain artists? And so I think that's a good start, because in those conversations, they'll be able to tell you about certain artists to be on the lookout for, whether that's from Chicago or elsewhere. They should have the conversation with you, particularly if it's a gallery, on the preservation of art, protecting your art, framing, the light, the temperature. So, storing art if you're not actually hanging it, so forth and so on, which is very crucial. There's a book here, Collecting African American Art, that's on the bottom. Which is a fantastic book, just going over the basics of collecting art. So what is art, the type of art, the different mediums, a history of certain artists, and the various renaissances or times or what have you, the difference between a print and original, ensuring the work, it runs the whole, but in very basic, comprehensive but basic kind of terms or an explanation. So I think that's a good place to start, but you don't have to like take a college course or anything like that. Yeah, you can use YouTube or Google, but And then the other thing is just talking to other collectors.
Yeah.
When I started collecting, there weren't a lot of collectors, but I didn't need that to be the case. But I didn't really have a lot of I might have had 2 individuals
Okay.
that I could bounce different ideas off of. Or like, man, what are some of the artists that you're looking at? Kind of like with stocks, or even with real estate. Okay, what's the hot areas in real estate? Where's the good places to buy? Or even with stocks, kind of looking at it, from that standpoint.
So why is being a collector important? Why is collecting art important as people of color, as Black people?
Man, that could be a podcast series in and of itself. That question.
You should start it.
Yeah, that's well, we could definitely start it because see, here's the thing. How can I say this and not be too harsh? We spend a lot of money on bullshit, and we have a kind of almost in a sense a metaphysical attachment to material items, which I understand, but at some point in time, when we're looking at it from like a community standpoint, an economic standpoint, and a legacy standpoint, we're gonna have to change the way we think on what we acquire. So when you think about, and so I don't want to speak about art purely for economic gain, although it's nothing wrong if somebody looks at the collection. I mean, I would want somebody to have a respect for the artist, the creation, the subject, content, and the culture. But some people are in it just, for the money, which I don't think that should be the prime motivation for really anything, but definitely for collecting art. So, and a lot of artists will tell you that as well. So, we spend so much of our money on things that depreciate. So cars, clothes, sneakers, all that, which I think in a sense has been kind of detrimental to our community over the years. Liquor. There are a variety of things, and it's not to say it's anything wrong with it, but we're not necessarily in an economic position to do so. And so therein lies where it hurts the community. So I definitely don't knock anybody for that. Like, I like clothes. I have a clothing brand. I started off as a clothing brand. I like sneakers. But I always strive to collect more things that appreciate than depreciate, because again, I'm thinking about legacy. I'm thinking about the kids. I don't have kids, but if I have one, what can I pass on? I'm not really going to be able to pass down used sneakers or clothes. They're not really going to have any value like that. Some will, but for the most part, they're not going to have value. And so I remember meeting, I'll just give you an example. One time I was talking with someone from the MCA. We were actually doing a talk at Patrick McCoy's house. So talking to the people from the MCA, they were doing something with a homie of mine, Joe Fresh Goods, known him for a minute. They were talking about like sneakers and bringing that in. It was like, yeah, sneakers have value. Sneakers have value. And I'm like, I think that's kind of the I don't want to say the wrong message to tell to our community, but I think we have to pump up acquiring those things which are our assets that can appreciate. Yeah. Sneakers are not really going to appreciate like that. So I told him, I said, look, I bought I bought 3 pair of Jordans in 2010. That was $700. I bought a Hebrew piece in that same year, $700. That was back when this stuff was
right. That's what I say. What?
But again, we have the Kerry James Marshalls, the Jacob Lawrences of the world amongst us, and that's what I'm really trying to encourage people. We need the Max Sassings of the world, the Caleb Mahavies of the world. Their pieces are going to be like in 1,000, possibly millions. Yeah. We have a chance to collect their work now. Let's kind of celebrate them and educate ourselves, and kind of participate in that process of consuming their pieces. But so anyway, I told the guy from the MCA, I said I bought 3 pair of Jordans, $700, which I've worn. I bought a Hebrew piece. I'm not gonna wear it. It's been in my house at the time I was in Hyde Park. The pair of Jordans, I might be able to sell them for $400. I say, how much you think the Hebrew piece is worth? It's 30,000. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like I'm making a comparison from that standpoint and say, no, we have to kind of change our thinking and understand the importance of collecting. Things to invest in. And absolutely. And again, I always say it's nothing wrong with that, but I think we've done that so much. Yeah. And making other people rich. Right? Yeah, so it's just about a balance.
Don't buy 10 pairs of shoes. Buy 3 and get you an art piece. Maybe.
It's not even that. Okay. I mean, whether you, I mean, look, I like art because it's something that can appreciate. See, here's the thing. Even if it doesn't appreciate, that's cool. I have some pieces that have no value, and that's fine. You like everything them. I like them. So, but the beautiful thing about art, other than like, you know, when you're looking at real estate and stocks, that's kind of like as straightforward as what it is. Art brings a certain type of I mean, obviously,
it's ambiguous in a way.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it can speak to you know, spirituality. It speaks to culture. It's something that resonates you when you're in your home, or whether you see it in somebody else's home or another institution. And then at the same time, it's appreciating in value. So when I'm like, the art that I collect is for my nephew. If I have kids, it'll be for my kids. I'm not even collecting the art for myself. A lot of people are like, are you gonna flip this? You gonna flip that? I might, but this is for the next generation. I have to leave the world better. Yeah, I have to leave the world better than it was when I came in. Like my father's not gonna leave me anything. I mean, my mother might leave me something. But it's like, what can I can leave a house, like stocks, set up an LLC, as various things you can work. But what can I leave what kind of legacy can I leave my nephew?
And just from a tangible standpoint, it's easily accessible.
Right, from a tangible standpoint, and I mean, you know, he can sell a piece, he can rent it out loan the piece out to a museum. So there's a variety of things that he can do with it. And one of the other crucial parts is, from a culture standpoint, he can tell that story. Yeah. I tell people all the time, we're creators of the work, we're not owners of the work. So yeah, we own the basketball court, but we don't own the team. We own the baseball field, but we don't own the team. We doing entertainment, this and that. We don't own the company. So yeah, you creators of the work, but who really has the power? The power lies in ownership. Yes. You understand what I'm saying? And that's how I look from an art perspective. And so I tell as many people as I can, particularly friends of mine, about that process. And a lot of them say, "Oh man, I thought you had to have a lot of money." Because like Jay-Z said, and I appreciate the entertainers stepping up, although Jay-Z, you was giving us drug talk till you almost turned 50. But anyway, yes. Yeah. So like, I appreciate him saying that, like, I bought some art for $1 million. 2 years later, it was, Jay-Z, I don't have $1 million. So that's cool, but I don't have one. Yes, you can do it. Swiss Beats, I like that you're promoting it. Yes, you can do it. The athletes of the world, the Chants, Artsy Fartsy, House of Philly, Hebrew Brantleys, the West Side Guns, they promote. I like that. But of course, you guys can do it. So when we hear that, we're like, oh yeah, yes, you can do that. But I like just kind of for that everyday people, rest of development, if you will, that everyday people to talk about it. And so that's why with my social media platform, that's why I try to present art, not to stunt, but just to say, like, I work a regular job. You understand what I'm saying? And so my peers or individuals younger than me say, "Oh, I can do this." Nobody was doing that when I was growing up. Yeah. Nobody was talking about art. And obviously you didn't have social media to kind of really disseminate your message to a large amount of people in a short amount of time. But it's like, no, this is something we have to talk about. I could not say anything, but why? It's like I told a homie of mine, like, dude, you can't buy every stock in the world. Let's share this knowledge. And so we even need to interject that more into the conversations that we have. Yeah, you can hit a day party, that's cool. Yeah, you can take vacation, that's cool. Yeah, but no, what if we're really going to be about the upliftment of our friends and family and other people, we have to discuss and talk about ways which can help uplift us, either from a social standpoint, from a mental standpoint, from a physical standpoint, or even a economic and surely a cultural standpoint. So,
and be a part of the story. I love that you said that. I feel like I've been that way with like merch, like with artists. Every artist that I love, like, I'm buying their merch, and now I'm almost to a point where like some of the tees, like, I don't even want to wear them. I just want them to be there because like I know that this is a story, because you're gonna know that like on this day, this concert, it's like, if you know, you know, if you were there, you were there. And I think you have a really good way of noticing early. So can you talk about that a little bit? Like, how are you able to, like, whether it's a Langston Alston or Kayla, or just all the artists that you've been able to either purchase from, but then also collaborate with, you've been on them very early, and you have a way of just noticing folks before they get to that point.
Before
like,
the price is get out of control.
Before it get crazy.
Yeah. Nah, that's
So
how it was for Kayla. So I want to backtrack. You talk about, T-shirts in a sense can actually be art. You know, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I got into doing T-shirts, because I was a person who bought T-shirts, and so I wanted a different way to express myself. But yeah, there's certainly you have pieces that you might still have in a plastic, or that you've never worn, because those are kind of art in and of itself, or collector's items. I do as well. I think I just bought a original. When did Spike Lee did Do the Right Thing? What was that, 92? And he did the song by EU DC Go-Go Music. But yeah, I just got one of the original joints from 92. But anyway, so yeah, those can be art pieces in a sense.
Yeah.
So, but to your question, repeat the question again.
You notice it early. How are you able to just find these artists, and then also build that trust so that they sell to you, but then also because I can remember, working at YCA and Langston having a show 2018, and before it even opened up, the show opened, you were there looking and picking your purchases.
Yeah.
Fast forward 2023, 5 years later, Langston is insane, and y'all dropping the print. You know what I mean? So like,
I'm not gonna front like it's a skill. Like, I don't think I have a skill or anything like that. I have studied various artists, of different eras and what they created, the stuff that I've seen in the various museums and institutions and galleries of the world, and looking at the subject, looking at the narrative of the medium, and then comparing that to the artists, particularly the artists that I've seen come out of Chicago. And in my mind, looking at that research that I've done, I'm like, no, that stuff is going to be in museums. Like, when I saw Kayla's work for the first time, I'm like, no, her stuff is going to be in museums. When I saw Max's, his stuff is going to be in the museums of tomorrow, if you will. And so, but for me, and particularly speaking, and we'll talk about the collaborations later, I develop a friendship with all of these artists. So even before my first purchase, so me being a fan of their work, but then also, it's, with some artists, and speaking to Langston Alston, I'm a fan of his work, but I'm a fan of him as a person even more than the work. And that just makes the whole collecting experience even more, the collaborating experience even more beautiful, in a sense, for lack of better phraseology, giving it more substance, if you will.
Richer, yeah.
Absolutely richer, meaningful, all the way around. And so a lot of collaborations have just come out of friendship, with these artists. So I can't say that, to get back to your question, I can't say that it's necessarily a skill per se, like as I it's not like I'm an NBA scout and I notice, I watched him
kind of sort
when
of
he was in the 8th grade and junior year. And he'll be, he's a potential NBA all-star and things of that nature, but because I'm not like every day looking to see who's next. I just have an interest in the art, so I'm gonna come across various artists and whatnot. I'm like, okay, I like this individual. I never live in my life. I never wait for somebody to tell me that something is dope or something is powerful. Like Harris once said on the line one time, a dope MC is a dope MC. With or without a record deal, all can see. So one doesn't necessarily have to be on. Unfortunately, that's happened with a lot of individuals from Chicago, whether you're looking at Kanye, whether you're looking at Common, it was like somebody else had to co-sign it.
Yeah.
Like that even kind of happened with Hebrew. And I mean, I go down a variety of artists. Like Hebrew had been doing work, but it wasn't until Jay-Z and Beyonce bought a piece. Everyone's like, oh, let me grab a Hebrew. He was already dope.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? And so that's one of the messages I try to tell individuals. Don't wait till somebody else co-signs. You shouldn't have had to wait till Michelle Obama said something about Kayla Mahaffey. If it's dope, it's dope, and you should want to collect it, whether or not somebody else has it or not. Yeah. Now that's good for the artist. Obviously, it puts more eyes. But Bisa Butler the same way. Her pieces weren't. I mean, her pieces are in the 100,000s right now. Yeah. But she had work before then. Mm-hmm. That was 2000. I don't have a Bisa Butler. I slept on Bisa Butler, and
you don't have a print?
I don't even have a print. I have okay. I have like some sign. My real good friend of mine, homegirl. Actually, she doesn't get enough credit in the art world. Erica Hubbard used to be with the Art Institute. Now she manages Bisa Butler. Then her husband Johnny Butler. Phenomenal people, phenomenal spirits. Again, dope
that
art,
dope art.
Yeah, dope artists, people. Dope spirit, dope people. But Erica Hubbard doesn't get enough. I want to mention her respect for her contributions to the art world. She works with Bisa, the Obama Foundation, so forth and so on. And whether it's, I value those people in the art game who are not in it for money. You have a lot of people in this for money. Mm. Some who I know I ain't gonna call them out, but it's like that shouldn't be your main motivation. Right. And if it wasn't, because what I ask creators, would you do it if you didn't get paid for it? Would you do what you do if there was no money behind it? So obviously we want to what OC said on Time's Up. Of course we gotta pay rent and money connects, but I'd rather be dope than have a whole. It's a principle of it. Anyway, I'm messing up the rap lyric, but that shouldn't be the primary motivation or the only motivation for why you do something. Mm-hmm. If you love it, or if you create, it shouldn't be all the time attached to monetary gain. If you really love the culture, would you participate in the culture if there was no money, if you didn't get paid for it? And so that's a question I think we have to always ask ourselves so that you can maintain a humble disposition. But I kind of got off track. But getting back to
you don't see it as like a thing that you're maybe just like special or gifted with, but it does come from being in consumption, being in community, and building authentic relationships.
Yeah, no, I'm always doing research. I don't even want to say research because I don't necessarily look. It's not like a job like or anything like that. It's just something that that I'm passionate about. I like to read books on art. The different artists, different times, different mediums, and things of that nature. And so, being a part, and then I've developed a community of collectors that I correspond with because I might not know about all the artists, so they'd be like, "Oh, check this artist out," and I say, "Okay, well, you check this artist out." Oh, I'm not really feeling their work, or I am feeling their work. Let me collect them, and so we'll look at somebody and we'll say, you know what, we need to hop on them before such and such, because one of the other things, and this might be, I don't want to say this on the podcast, I'm gonna say it anyway. I'm gonna say it because to the collectors. I have a lot of friends who have galleries. Anyway, as a collector, I tend not to collect from galleries. Okay. The reason why, because the galleries take 50%. And I get it. So you're going straight to the artist. I get, if I can, I go straight to the artist. And for me, I've developed relationships because you got to think, if an artist has a piece for $10,000, the galleries, for the most part, get 50%. Now, if you're an artist who's of a certain stature, then you might negotiate a 60-40 split. Artist getting 60, gallery getting, or museum getting 40%, or 70-30 if you're on the higher end. For most of these artists, particularly starting out, it's 50-50, which is cool when you're thinking about marriage or other business. But and I guess in a sense, it can happen. I mean, social media, with the advent of social media, you don't necessarily need the galleries as much. But I say that to say, if they're selling a piece for $10,000, the gallery getting $5,000, the artist getting $5,000. I'd rather go to the artist and say, let me give you $6,000 for the piece. So I'm not paying the $10,000 price. I'm still getting the piece, and the artist is getting more. And they're getting $1,000 more than what they want. And that's what. Yeah. So that's what I like to do. So that's a lot of people don't. That's kind of not real cool. And hopefully nobody. I don't want any of my friends who own galleries or anything like that to get upset at me. But that's, if I was giving advice to a collector, that's something that I would state.
Yeah,
You know, it's
going
nothing
straight to the
wrong,
artist.
but I mean, look, you got to understand, you're paying for the piece, then you're paying for the framing. Sometimes the framing is more than a piece. And that's another tidbit. Get with a framer who's not going to tax you. I've seen, setting up those relationships. Get with a framer that's not going to tax you, because I've seen people pay, like for my art, for my collaboration prints, they'll pay $600 for a piece, and the framing is $800. The downside to the good thing is, yes, you have it framed, it's protected. The downside, that can discourage someone or kind of marginalize the level of interest that they have to buy future pieces, because you're like, man, yeah, I got this piece, but I'm gonna have to get it framed. So you're thinking like, okay, I might have to pay X amount of dollars, so let me just not collect the piece at all.
Yeah.
And so if you can set up a relationship with the framer to kind of get a good deal on that, that'll further your collection. If I had to pay regular price for framing, I wouldn't have 60% of my collection.
Gotcha.
So I have a connect. Yeah.
When working with artists and doing collabs, how does that work? Are you upfronting the cost? Are you splitting the revenue?
You want me to give my strategy?
not the full strategy, but I think you touched on it a little bit. You talked about relationships, right? But like when it comes down, and also if you can talk a little bit also about working that full-time job, but then also maintaining a full-time brand for 10 plus years. So like, how, like, what have you learned? What's happening with that? And then when you are collaborating with artists, what does that relationship look like? Are you hitting them up? I know sometimes you've already commissioned a piece and that piece has turned into prints. Like, it looks different, but what does that look like? Who paying for it? What's the split? As much as you feel comfortable sharing, and then what are your, like?
Honestly, Nicole, a lot of it has been organic through friendships. My very first collaborative piece was with Max Sassing. He did a piece at the YCA. He did the Fred Hampton piece. Mm-hmm. And so I hit him, and I normally don't like to have an artist commission a piece that's similar to the work that they've done. Okay. But Fred Hampton, being one of my heroes, one of the more phenomenal people that in history, one of the more phenomenal people, especially what he's able to accomplish at the age in which he was assassinated. It was just, and I'm about to go on another tangent. Like with the movie that came out, like I think it was beautiful that they came out with the film. I think you could have told more about his story and what he was doing at 14, 15 in high school. Had his mother phone tapped, the Emmett Till connection, what he was doing with the NAACP. When the Panthers, like you didn't have to base it on just, it was Judas and the Black Messiah. You didn't have to base it on William O'Neal, the FBI informant that told him. You could have just told the story just about his life. But that's a whole nother story. But anyway, so Max Sassing did the Fred Hampton piece that was at YCA. I said, man, I love that piece so much. I need a similar joint. So I commissioned him to do a piece. Commissioned him to do a piece, and from that came my first print collaboration. It got so much good feedback. We did the shoot on the west side where they had the original Fred Hampton mural, and they replaced it with something else. I like the old one better. No disrespect to the artist, but we did that, and it got so much good feedback. Max was like, "Let's do a print." And so it just, that just made sense. It was organic because I was collecting original works. I was collecting prints. And so that was the first piece. So I didn't necessarily have to reach out to Max for that. With the Kayla situation, Kayla was somebody that I was already cool with. Now I did reach out to her. We had a conversation. Langston, that conversation just came about just from, chopping it up and building. Hey, let's do a piece based on a similar body of work. Dale Edward Murray, who's a visual artist out of the UK. He was my first international collab. Done a lot of work with Complex, various magazines in the UK and here. Mm-hmm. Done a lot of illustration work. We did the collaboration, the Biggie joint, the shot of Biggie freestyling. I think he was 18 at the time.
Any collabs you enjoyed the most?
I do want to answer that. Before we end the interview, I won't say which one I've enjoyed the most because I enjoyed all of them. I enjoyed the entire process from obtaining the original piece, because pretty much on all of them I own the original piece. of the work, which so that's that. I don't want to necessarily say that's an incentive, but I want to tell an artist like, no, I'm a supporter. I'm a fan of your work. I want to, so I'll ask them if I have the ability to purchase the original piece. And so, but I enjoy everything from the photographer taking the shot of the piece for the print. Bianca Garcia is my go-to for that, phenomenal photographer out of Chicago. And from that to if there's merch associated with it, which I try to release in conjunction and association with each print release. The photo shoots, the video shoots, I enjoyed the entire process, the rollout, social media, posting things of that nature. And so a lot of that is fun working with the artists. And even some, just like with the Scent Rock collab, like I knew Scent Rock, but just through doing the collab, because that was like a long time coming. And then with Lupe, me and Lupe go back to before Kick Push. But me and Scent Rock just developed a stronger bond and a stronger friendship, which will last just through the process of that. So it's a variety of things that can come out of the creation process, other than just the releasing the product and making money off of it. But I'll just discuss the process in general. I won't say it necessarily as a suggestion for one with the art, but I try to make the collaborations as easy on the artist as possible. A lot of artists just like to create.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying they don't have other talents. A lot of them are great orators, good writers, and things of that nature. I'm not saying that, but when it comes down to art, what I've learned, a lot of them just like to create. So I'll say, well, I want to do everything else. You'll create the piece. I'll have the photographer. They'll do the photos. I'll create the merch. If you want to contribute, cool. I'll run it by you. When it comes time to do the prints, I'm meeting with the printer. I work with two of the best in the nation, Pop Inc. and then All Star Press. They do some phenomenal work. And so even sending that image to them, working with them, Z and the crew at All Star, Kurt, Zach and Steve, the crew at Pop Inc., and sitting down, working with them, and then, running about an artist. Okay, what do you feel about the colors? Okay, we're going to go with 25. We're going to go with 30. Whatever is involved with that process, I'm paying for that. The cost of the prints, I'm paying for. If it's the photo shoots, the video shoots, I'm paying for. So artistically, I just need for them to contribute the piece. I'll handle everything else. And then the profits after, from the sales of the piece, then, we'll split from there. And, most of them are cool with that. I won't necessarily say what the split is, just out of respect for the artist. Yeah. But that's the way I tend to do it. So with the shipping of the pieces, they don't have to worry about any of that. If it's merch associated with that, they don't have to worry about any of that. With the certificates of authenticity that come with that, they don't have to worry about any of that. And then the video production, the photo production, that comes from me. Okay. So that I'll take that out of my cut. That doesn't come out of their cut. The only thing that comes out of their cut is what I had to pay for the actual print. Yeah. And most of them are understandable of that, but not all. What I've learned from talking to various galleries and museums and institutions, not all of them even do that. They're like, oh, you're not taking what you paid for the video out, because videos can get rather pricey, photo shoots can get rather pricey. They're like, you taking that? I said no. And so I try to make it as easy for them as possible, so that I can kind of maximize their level of participation and interest in the project as well. So I'm not having to hit him like, yo, you need to do this, you need to do that. So with this last Scent Rock Lupe project, it was some challenges with that. It was fun, but it was some challenges just because you're dealing with various parties and management and music and legal things and so forth and so on. So
yeah, well, it looked dope. And y'all were that's probably 3 different pieces of art that kind of came through that. It was merch, it was the actual piece and
merch, the vinyl. Well, it wasn't an actual piece of vinyl. I couldn't do that, but the certificate of authenticity, setting that as a vinyl piece to come, because that was a audio art piece that done by Lupe, which was released late April, I think April 28th, it was released. Supposed to release on the same day as the print. We just couldn't line it up. But Scent Rock created off the piece. And that's one of the things I want to mention. I always try to do something like with the clothing. When I looked at clothing, I'm like, okay, I see individuals creating shirts. to try to be as different as possible, whether that be from a font standpoint, perspective standpoint, the layout, whatever. And I'm not trying to say I accomplished that every time, but I wanted to somewhat set myself apart from other brands. And I want to do the same thing with the art and the print and collaboration. Always have a little something different to it, as opposed to just releasing the print. I think you need to give the people more. I think they deserve more. And so just putting a different spin on it than just saying, here's a print, it's $600, buy it, ship it, and that's it. Okay, are you going to tell a story? A lot of them don't tell a story behind it. Mm-hmm. What does the piece mean? What does it mean to the artist? And so, even with the Kayla situation, Kayla's, I don't think she'll mind me saying this, she's somewhat reserved, kind of shy in a sense. I'm like, Kayla, the people want to hear you speak. They want to hear the artist speak and break down the piece. And I got so much good feedback on that when we did the video, because they said, I appreciate the piece even more. Some people bought it, some people didn't buy it. It didn't matter if they bought it. It felt just as Nas said on mixtape Old Track, money never really was a part of the rap. Paid was having people start to clap. And so that there's, I take just as much joy. Yeah, I take just as much joy in a compliment than I do in a purchase, because I'm understanding everybody might not want to spend $30, $40 or $50 for a shirt or $500 for a piece, but that doesn't mean they're either they're any less of an individual, or that doesn't mean that they appreciate what you presented any less. So I take that, but I'm like, the people need to hear you speaking. The people like, yo, that resonated with me so much. Her speaking about what it meant. I could have said it all day, but her saying what that meant. And so those are the things that I try to bring different to the project. So I encourage individuals, don't take my formula, because I've seen some people take it. I'm not gonna name any names, and it's cool. But
speaking of streetwear, though, you have been creating kind of conscious streetwear before it was cool, in a way, or kind of dramatized, or just very front and center. What are your thoughts on kind of where that conscious streetwear, from tees to whether it's any like mantra based streetwear? Like, what are your thoughts?
A lot of people fronting. I'm just gonna put it like that. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
I'm not. A lot of people fronting. I cherish individual, whether that be in a political spectrum, the cultural sector. Like, it's what you're doing, you, and that's one of the things with Instrumental I wanted to do. This has to be a representation of myself and my interests. If I'm creating something that I really don't feel, but just because I think it's popular or just because it sells, I'm not necessarily being authentic. I don't necessarily knock anyone for that per se, but it's like,
we knocking.
You not, yeah.
We all about
it's
we're gonna put you on blast, but
that's not you.
Yeah, it's a side.
Yeah, not this time, but next time I'm gonna name names. Yeah, it's Mobb Deep. We. Like, you should feel it. It's what and we talked about this before. It's Nancy Pelosi putting on the kente cloth for the Democrats. Nancy Pelosi, you don't have to do that. If you don't feel it, that's cool, but you don't have to do it. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? Because now it's a slap in the face. It was like the corporations who was putting up black squares. First of all, what is that? What is that going to do? What does that mean? What are you putting a black square going to do? Yeah, it's performative art. It's performative art, and you have a lot of that. You have a lot of that in the art game, because a lot of these institutions and galleries are white owned, which is cool. They don't give a fuck about this culture. So they don't care. If we got time, I'll explain that story. But yeah, they don't. I'm not saying none of them care. I think I can firmly speak that a few of them really care about the culture. I think you should. But it is what it is. And, we can talk about, investing in the community, so forth and so on, or, Public Enemy line. I like Nike, but wait a minute, the community supports it, put some money in it. So we got time, we'll talk about that. But back to streetwear, and it's, particularly over the pandemic. The pandemic was interesting in that it was a combination of individuals being at home and so they, you know, in a sense, had more money to spend, more time to, you know, be around family. So you like, okay, well, let's kind of, you know, decorate the home. What can I buy? I really can't go anywhere. So let me look online. Okay, this artist here. So you had the combination of the pandemic, people having more access to money, people being at home, and then you had Black Death. And it said you had Black tragedy. So you had the George Floyd situation. I was just telling somebody the other day, you know, people celebrate Juneteenth and Independence Day, but that's, do I want to go down that? But anyway, so you can make a real argument. Had George Floyd not died, would we have had Juneteenth? People been asking for Juneteenth for years, and it's like, I mean, I have my thoughts on that. I'm not sure what power that's going to give us. But again, we're just speaking to performative art and a lack of tangible items, a lack of
what would you say are the tangible things that folks can do to not, specific to streetwear in that community? Like, what are some tangible things that brands and even individuals who are making maybe conscious streetwear can do to support the culture? What advice would you give?
What advice? Well, first I'll speak to. I've seen a lot of brands who during the pandemic. I'll make this point before I get to that. Who never did what you call conscious or black tees. Never did that. But they saw a lane opening. We speak to people doing things or creating things just because it's popular. And so, and a lot of people hit me about that. Like, yo, what you think about, like, you were doing this a long time before. I was talking to Rello from Cherry Mountain Arts and Fat Tiger about that. Because he had made a statement on that and kind of around that time we were having a discussion, and a lot of people were hitting me up. Well, what do you think about the fact that you've been doing this for a long time? You didn't really get you hadn't really got a lot of love for that, even within your own city for it. And now people who are doing it who had never done it before are getting in love. I mean, that's front. MC Breeze said a long time ago, ain't no future in your fronting. But clearly in 2020, 21, 22, 23, there is a future. And so, and that, in addition to the hype, can take you a long, long way. And so I don't necessarily, I'm not saying they're horrible people. I just can't really honor and respect that because that's not what you feel. Like, you don't care about Malcolm. Why are you putting a Malcolm quote on your shirt? You don't care about King. Why are you putting it? Why are you putting King in? Why are you putting that? You've never done that. You don't have to do that. Mm-hmm. And you had individuals and, you know, corporations. You had the Nikes of the world and Adidas of the world. Like, you don't have to do. If it took somebody dying, if it took, one of the things me and Lupe said this a long time ago, and it's something that's always resonated with me, is that tragedy is our hero. And so what it speaks to is, why does it always take tragedy, particularly black tragedy, black suffering, for us to get this or us to get that? I mean, you can go all the way back to the bus, Emmett Till, August 1955, bus boycotts, mm-hmm. December 1955, and then say, okay, that led to the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act, 64, 65. And so, but a lot of times it was the tragic situations which led to victories or so-called victories or upliftment. And so why is it always that? Why does it have to take somebody taking the ill of black tragedy? And so I think just even in that, when you speak to a liberation standpoint, we need to be a bit more proactive in that. But again, it's even with the shirts, a lot of that came out of black tragedy. And so it's like, yo, if you're gonna represent blackness, if you're gonna represent culture, you should just do that anyway. It shouldn't take something to happen for you to put that out. True. And so, yeah, you had I saw a lot of that.
So I know we're talking about, you know, the brands and kind of the folks that may be in the performative space. What would you say to folks who are listening who, you know, I think Chicago has a lot of brands who are kind of making their way, doing things that are conscious. I'll shout out Progression, which I know you support. I'll shout out Trap House. So we have some
one of my
brands
favorite brands that I've seen coming out of Chicago, Sample Progression. One of my favorite brands because he feels it.
Yeah. So the question
That's
is,
him.
Well, yeah, the question is, what advice are you giving to folks who are in that space where they, I don't know, I feel like 2020, although it was like a time where people were feeling guilty about a lot of the things, right?
Yeah.
A lot of that white guilt. But
a lot of people got paid off white guilt.
But in a lot of ways, we as people of color found ourselves. We had time and isolation to figure out, what do I really want to do and what do I really not want to be doing? And that birthed a lot of people who pivoted, you know, whether it was their art, the way that they're moving, the way that they're doing things. So what would you say to those folks who are trying to push the culture forward, do conscious streetwear in the same, you know, likeness as some of the folks that I just mentioned? What is your advice to them of how they can not be performative, not compromise, but then also put out some great stuff?
It's not a lot of individuals, I'll say that, unfortunately. Just do you have to do what represents you. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't create something based on fad. I mean, if it works in association, if something that you've seen that people, you know, a certain type of style or design or what have you lay out, you've seen, you know, various brands that have done that and people have taken a liking to. It's nothing wrong with taking a look at that and saying, okay, I could, you know, flip my narrative or my subject to kind of be in alignment with that to a certain degree. There's nothing wrong with that. But as far as the subject of what you put out, that should be something that you represent. So as long as you remain true to that and true to yourself, I think that can work. And here's the thing: everybody might not feel it. Mm-hmm. You know, I've thought about plenty of times. I would get, you know, it hasn't all been peaches and cream. I thought about shutting the brand down because I'm like, yo, people just not really feeling it. Like, I'm putting out what's myself, but people feeling it. Yeah, like in times of tragedy, people are like, oh yeah, you still got that what's your name shirt? You still got that Angela Davis joint? I've been had it.
Yeah.
Why did it take? But anyway, so it's, but I mean, it's just really, it's not like a long drawn answer that I would give someone for that. I'll just say, be true to yourself. Try to be as an original as possible. Try to be as creative as possible. Try to set yourself apart from somebody else.
Yeah.
Try to set yourself apart from another brand. You've had a lot of brands that have. I mean, I've had friends like kind of copy off me in a sense, and it's cool. We're not gonna lend a friendship, but I mean, yeah, it's copycat material, and I can't necessarily respect it. A lot of people think imitation is the highest form of flattery. I think it can be like the lowest form of expression. So I don't necessarily subscribe to that theory. I mean, Rap Miners Lives of Hip Hop, my lawyer sent out 60 plus cease and desist letters on that, to the point like I'm tired. Every time I go to Google, I see another company has another. I'm like tired of sending the letters. So it is what it is with that. But again, try to do what you feel, and try to be as original and creative and authentic as you possibly can. No, you might not. Everybody's not going to be at Joe Fresh Goods. Joe's the homie. I love what he's doing, but everybody's not going to do that. And you should not get discouraged if you're not having that type of appeal or you're on that level. As long as you're, you know, somewhat making an impact. I mean, you don't want to, you know, go into poverty doing anything like that. But don't get discouraged if you're not at a certain level. Social media can have one feeling like they're not keeping up with the Joneses, or if they're not successful. And that can play on you and limit you and marginalize you, both from a business perspective and even from a mental perspective as well. So that would be kind of like my short advice for individuals in that lane.
Okay. So, last question. What advice would you give to an artist who is battling setting their prices and building collectors? So as an artist, you're a collector, you know what it's like to work with artists, you know the best practices from the artists that you've been able to approach. What are some key things for an artist who's, you know, because that is a thing, like a piece can be 50 or it can be 500. It's whatever the artist is saying, and kind of how you start is what you make it. So if there's an artist who's starting out and they're, you know, maybe having a difficulty around pricing, what are some things that they can lean on? And then if they're trying to build this appetite for collectors, whether it's, you know, people up, down, or to the side of them, what are some things that they should consider?
So I'll answer the pricing question second. The funny thing is, some of the artists who have the largest followings, they didn't reach out to anybody. So they weren't, you know, I know some artists, they'll DM they'll DM individuals, say, hey,
Yeah, I
check
got
out my
this
work
piece,
when
yeah.
you get a chance. And I don't think it's anything wrong with that. Some people I think can take that as one being thirsty to a certain degree. I don't.
Okay.
But I've heard that feedback from collectors. So I don't think it's anything wrong with it. But yeah, most of the major artists, they weren't reaching out
They were just
to
creating.
anybody. Yeah, they just created. And it's kind of like, and although I don't agree to it, Wesley Snipes said on Mo Better Blues, Spike Lee film, if you play the shit, Roots also used it on the album. If you play the shit the people like, if you play the shit they like, the people will come, or something like that.
Yeah.
And so that sounds good, Wesley Snipes and Spike Lee, but that's not always the case. And so I think you just need to focus on creating and your work and presented it the best way you can.
Okay.
I don't even know if I have any advice on the best way to I mean, obviously you want to get the work out there on social media. You don't want to. I don't think that one should. I don't think you necessarily have to put it in people's faces every day.
Mm-hmm.
There are some people that do that are very successful, but you want people to kind of miss you to a certain degree. So I think you don't always have to. You don't necessarily always need to be on the scene. You don't necessarily need to always engage from a social media standpoint. You need to have a presence. People need to be able to see your work or your catalog or your website. But I've seen a lot of artists, have some success by kind of not being on the scene. Because a lot of them are introverts in a sense. You have some that are kind of out there, but some are introverts. And so I've seen success both ways. So I don't know if I could give any firm advice on how to obtain more collectors. I would just say, just try to create the best artwork possible and let the kind of collectors come to your page or to you or to your show or what have you. And so if you do a phenomenal job at that, obviously your work has to be dope to a certain degree, and that could be subjective, but that's the way you can get collectors. The second question is with pricing a piece. I don't know if I would be kind of like, if I would have, I don't want to say the authority figure providing information on that. I think with that, I'll answer the question based on the conversation that I've had, communication that I've had with artists, and that's just taking a look at, because a lot of it is based on medium. Are you doing mixed media? Are you working with oil, or what the case might be? The size comes into question, how much time you spent on it, how a lot of the price is determined by whose collection you're in, if you've been in a museum. And so that can factor into it. Now, if you're starting off, a lot of those things you can't compare. You haven't been in a museum or any shows, so you really can't compare the work. But I would just say, take a look at the kind of art landscape, the different, because you can kind of group artists. You can say, okay, this person has a similar style to this one. This has a person.
What's their work going
so
for?
So you can kind of look at what their work is going for, both from a whether they're selling on the site or from a museum level, and you can compare the medium that they're using or the size that they're using, and you could start off. Some artists have come out the gate at a high level. I don't think that's always the thing. I don't think that's the best practice or the best approach to have. I think you should start low, and then as you start to gain, collectors and notoriety and things of that nature, depending on the shows that you've been in and whatnot, that can increase the price of your pieces and things of that nature. And you can kind of see. So I know some artists that have had their prices set for a particular time. They'll, from a trial standpoint, they'll say, okay, let me go a little bit higher on the next show or the next print release to see how the people receive it. And if they receive it well, okay, then I'll leave it at that price. And as you continue to grow and things of that nature, whether that's doing various collaborations with corporations outside of museum shows, then the price increases from there. But a lot of, I would say too, they should speak to various gallery owners who've been in the game for a long time and who've done a variety of shows. They can give them some information on how to price their piece as well. So that's a good nugget or some advice or some guidance that I would give an artist starting out.
From the vaults, what is that? How did you come up with that concept?
From the Vault speaks to making pieces available from the archives, displaying them, but also making the pieces available to the consumer, online and through the that was like the third installation I've had. But for people to pull up and kind of see and possibly purchase the various pieces, whether that's music, books, vinyl. I hope to do another one before the end of the year, or the beginning of 2024, like a kind of from the vaults, and set that up and make it kind of a larger type display, a larger type installation that runs longer. Like the first one I did was just for a day, just for an evening. But the next one I want to do, I either want to do it, I don't even want to do it for a weekend. I want to do it like for a month, and then with that set up various programming. Speaking on some of the things that we've spoken on here, the importance of collecting, how to preserve your collection, framing, insurance, appraisal, phrases, and then inviting those individuals who are experts in those fields to come out, along with some of the artists who I could just hit with a phone call. I need you to come through and da-da-da-da. Let's speak on this collab, and, and invite the youth out, the kids. And again, my part of my brand now is, one of the things I don't think I mentioned is the reason why I'm so excited about it, and I talk to, whoever I can about it, is because, and it speaks to the importance of collecting, is that a lot of us, because we don't, again, ownership, because we don't own, like, somebody that owns the Art Institute does not look like me. The people who own the Museum of Contemporary Art, they don't look like me. A lot of the gallery owners, they don't look like me. So if they have a show with an artist, who do you think is going to have access to those pieces? Their friends. That's their collector base. And so now that's beginning to change. And a lot of that is in part due to collectors, because a lot of the artists, and I'll say it, I hope don't think I'm calling them out, a lot of the artists don't speak to us. See, a lot of artists want more people of color to buy their work. They just don't want to say it. Whereas we as collectors saying, no, that, like, what's the museum going to tell you? No, we're not going to have your show. You need to tell the museum, no, I want some of the people that look like me, some of my friends, to be able to have access to buy the piece, because otherwise we wouldn't have access. So coming in 2014, 15, 16, one of the complaints that a lot of people will have, yes, I want to buy a piece. Yeah, I want to buy, let's say, a Hebrew, but it sells out in a minute, and I don't have access. Yeah. But meanwhile, with the show, the gallery owner, and I can't say there's nothing wrong with it in a sense, but they've already sold the pieces before you even have come to the show. So you might have the money, but do you have the access? And that's why I stepped into the game with the first Max collab. Like, I'm not scared to say it on the camera. Like, I made the pieces available to the community first, from the fans and friends and fam, because I know had another gallery or institution released it, it would have been the same people complain online, I didn't get a chance to get the piece. So that's part of the reason why.
From the vaults.
That's part of the reason why I do From the Vaults, and why I've done these collaborations. And look, I'm a lover of all people and love all races, but we've just been left out of the process, out of the that culture for so long. So we think we are part of it because we creating it, but no, we need to own some of this stuff that we're creating and do it. We talked about Bisa Butler. Bisa Butler does some phenomenal pieces. Harriet Tubman, Tuskegee Airmen, Chadwick Boseman. The people that own them pieces don't look like us. So yeah, it's cool, but they don't look like us. The African American flag by David Hammonds, red, black, and green. We don't own that. A lot of the Black Panther, we don't own that. So it's cool. It's cool to look at on social media to post, like, who owns this Gary James Marshall that just sold for $20 million. That's good for the artist, but I'm speaking about having more people involved with the process. And so it's one of the main messages I try to get out. Like, again, just to reiterate the point as we close, there's nothing wrong with buying material items, but just understand the power or the lack of kind of power in that as we begin to look at, like I said, we've made Nike and Adidas, and we've made them millions and billions. What they've given back has been crumbs. a few scholarships, a few, a lot of those corporations don't like to do anything where they have to stay in the community. If you notice, they'll just do it and that's it. So we got to say, no, you have to give us something more tangible. You gonna set up a hospital? Like y'all giving us enough. We're gonna play basketball whether you give us a court or not. Like you gonna bring a hospital, you gonna bring a school. What else you gonna bring that's gonna kind of benefit the community or deal with some of these societal ills? You gonna set up a gallery? You gonna give it this and that? And that's another discussion for another day. But all of that it speaks to the importance of why we need to collect art, artifacts, so forth and so on. And so we can tell stories like I'm telling now. So, I'm telling my nephew, like, when I'm gone, like, you're going to have to you need to tell somebody like this. My favorite piece that I own is Revenge at Emmett Till. I think that might have been one of the questions. That's the most expensive piece as far as what it has appraised at now that I have. Like, yeah, that's cool. Okay. Who was Emmett Till? Why was he important? What was the story behind it? Who was Fred Hampton? Who was Harriet? We have to tell a story. And I'll wrap it up and say this. I was at Art Expo 4 years ago, and a gallery was representing an artist. Two stories. A gallery was representing an artist, and in the book was James Baldwin. This was a prominent artist. I won't say who it was. The gallery, it was two owners. One of the galleries did not know that was James Baldwin. And here you are representing an artist who's making you money, because we haven't benefited off of the white society has benefited off of art, the black art, more than we ever have. That's the same way with a lot. Again, another reason why it's important for more of us to collect and own, because they're the main benefactors of that. But I'm like, yo, you don't even know who James Baldwin is? You're representing an artist who's painting, setting up a narrative, strong black subject, James Baldwin being one, and you don't even know who he is. See, you're not in it for the culture. You have no respect for the culture. Mm-hmm. And it's not a requisite, but I think it's crucial to understand that, and we need to demand that individuals have a level of respect, whether they be white or black, people within our own community. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there before we wrapped up.
That's well said. Like, so being able to, as an artist, you have an access to like encourage that by not fearing putting those limitations or those requests to just have more folks of color have access to the art. And so you've been doing that for some years now. You will continue to do that.
I will, and I need the artists, my homies and my friends. You guys have to step it up as well, because they have much more of a voice than we do. Mm-hmm. It's like Andre 3000 said, if you don't move your feet, then we don't eat. So we like neck to neck. So it's like we both play a role in uplifting the arts and embracing the arts and telling the story. You guys need the collectors. Yeah. The collectors are why you're up, and a lot of them do appreciate that. But because of that, you need to speak up more, because it's going to resonate more so than what I could ever do. So, because I can't do a show with the gallery, so they don't really care. The artists can. But anyway.
Well, thank you so much for your contribution to the culture. Thank you so much for being my mentor. Thank you for this shirt. Although I purchased it, but it's a fire collab. I would have gave it to you. I would have gave it to you for free. I get online and I'll purchase it. I got something for you though. All right, for sure. But I continuously learn from you. You are an important Chicagoan, Kankakeean, and just very instrumental in a lot of people's lives.